Hey folks, and welcome to the Daily Ratings Podcast. It's a show where each week we'll sit down with Vincent Daly to get his thoughts on the latest movies he's been watching, both older films and new releases. And don't worry, there's no spoilers. Vince will give a brief review of the movie, share some thoughts, and of course, then rate the film. The Daily Ratings are always fair, honest, and most importantly, they're consistent. On today's show, Vince will be rating and reviewing Whatever Happened to Baby Jane, directed by Robert Outridge, Mommie Dearest by Frank Perry, Streets of Fire by Walter Hill, RRR, directed by S.S. Rajamouli, and finally newly released Bodies, 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 directed by Helena Rain. So stay tuned and enjoy the show. Vincent Daly, how we going, buddy?
Hey, how's it going, Tom?
It's going okay for me. How was your wacky? I don't even know what this week was for you. How was it? Was it good? Was it fun?
Yeah, this was good.
Throw me for a curveball here. I don't know what any of these movies are.
The SS, RR, Bodies, Bodies, Bodies. You're repeating yourself.
But no, good week for yourself?
Yeah, it was a good week. I think for me, the first two entries were a little bit of a scrapped actual special project, which I still was interested enough and hadn't seen the film, so I was like, all right, well, might as well, just cover them on the podcast. And some exciting new flicks. I was happy to maybe give some spotlight to these to the two last films.
Right,
excited to talk about them because they're pretty out there, and in a good way, certainly.
Okay, well, let's get started right away. We're going back to 1962. The movie is Whatever Happened to Baby Jane. Robert Outridge, who's relatively famous, I would say, well known for back then.
Yeah.
Just set this movie up a little bit. What are we even dealing with? I know it.
Yeah,
but I know nothing.
Right.
Yeah.
And very similarly to Mommie Dearest as well. It's kind of something that you know, and then it's just like, well, I don't think I've actually ever seen this.
Exactly.
So,
yeah.
This is Bette Davis and Joan Crawford. The idea, the tie between the two is around Joan Crawford because Mommie Dearest covers kind of the if you will, the psychotic or the very neurotic personal life of Joan Crawford, and we have a dip into a little bit of the production of some of her films in Mommie Dearest. The idea of the special was maybe to have that spotlight, that connection a little bit. Like I said, it didn't work out, but I was still interested in watching these films, and Bette Davis, obviously. Or maybe not obviously, but it's she's an actress that is huge. I don't have a lot of experience with, so I was like, well, what better time to maybe give some love to some older films?
Yeah, I like that idea for sure.
Bette Davis plays Baby Jane, a spoiled child star. Think like a Shirley Temple, if you will, or something like that. She is spoiled. That she is beloved, but also as she gets older, her public perception cools off.
Okay,
Her sister is Joan Crawford. And in an inverse kind of trajectory for her career, has a skyrocket when Bette Davis's character Jane is kind of cooling off in her career to kind of plummeting to have no work at all. This basically culminates in a very toxic relationship between the two sisters. On Bette Davis's side, a toxic blend of alcoholism, mental instability, and kind of overwhelming jealousy. It really makes the rare role for Davis being the villain. And I think more than anything, this was an exciting movie to see because it's like, I don't know, it's so old, and you get to see an interesting switch up of, wow, this this actress is playing such a dynamic villain and so much baked into the performance and how she pulls from this mental instability. It was really quite enjoyable to watch. I think if there's anything I walk away in maybe making a recommendation for a much older film, like why would you go watch this out of the blue or something like that?
Right.
It's for that performance, a striking performance for Bette Davis and being in this villain role, which I enjoyed quite a bit. Basically, the setup of a majority of the film is we basically get up to speed on this rivalry between the two sisters in their acting career. But a tragic accident has Joan Crawford's character basically be, paralyzed from the hips down. She broke her spine, and she is now in a wheelchair, dependent on her crazy-ass sister. So it is... a kind of a tale of tormenting. It is, her being paraplegic in the wheelchair. She is very much held captive by her crazy sister, trying to gaslight her, trying to mess with her, and seeing that escalate throughout the film. That's basically the whole structure there.
And what ages are we dealing with? Of the two sisters, roughly? Like, if you had to guess?
Well, it follows through out there since they're kids, because we first check in with them as far as child stars. I think the ages of these sisters are supposed to be like maybe early 50s, if you will, or something like that.
Okay.
So, and obviously not quite the age of the actresses at the time, even in 62.
Right, okay.
When this was made. So, this setup, though, as far as the structure we have to Joan being stuck in a wheelchair, stuck in a house, and kind of trapped, kind of being tormented, it reminded me of a proto version of Misery, almost down to the exact layout of the house itself.
Really?
A single stairwell, the stairs being a obstacle for Joan being in the wheelchair and trying to get access to the phone or something like that.
That's a kind of, I like that.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's definitely missing some of the refinement of what makes Misery an 82 for me. That is a big movie and a great movie to watch. But when it comes to this film, I was really shocked how much it really was a template or a proto version of that story. Maybe it just boils down to her being in that wheelchair the whole time and being immobile and in this torturous, psychological drama.
Yeah.
It was a good time. It was interesting how much both of those films depended on just flirting with getting caught the entire time. That's basically the whole film as far as the conflict there. I think if I have to kind of shift the review of why this film would be still worth your time side by side with Misery, I would say, again, I circle back to Bette Davis's performance. It was really kinetic seeing her be a villain on screen.
Yeah, I like that. Was it almost like, I don't know, was it uncomfortable at times, basically sitting there watching?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Because Bette Davis is one of those actresses that I see as glitz and glamour and very refined and whatnot.
Yeah, that golden age of Hollywood. And,
exactly.
Yeah.
And seeing her get so kind of nasty through alcoholism, through mental instability, we see her degrade mentally throughout the film and go through a gambit of emotions. She's sometimes pulling very childish. She pulls very flashes of anger, flashes of being irrational, plotting. It's a whole gambit of this this cocktail, this kind of chemical instability in her.
That's nice. So it's disturbing, and it probably should be a little disturbing to watch. Like, that's a good thing.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's quite the experience for like a 62 movie, watching like this heavy hitter actress.
For sure. I think this for me is in the ripple effect of like a Hitchcock.
Sure. Yeah.
And these type of films are being taken, and certainly I think actresses and actors at the time are more interested in that as a kind of thriller, as a genre is really taking hold and taking shape. So by 62, that was well said and done. But I still think Davis does a phenomenal job at not just being crazy. It's not just her being hammy or campy in her performance. You can see she's pulling from different parts of her emotional psyche, the character's emotional psyche.
Right.
Why she would be unstable in this way throughout the film. And I think that is really tuning into my reason of why this would be worth your time side by side. You're sitting on streaming and you see Misery and you see this film. Why would you give this, the time of day beyond, maybe just having the time to watch both films and being in the mood for that? I would say Bette Davis's performance specifically. She gets the Oscar nomination here.
Oh, cool. Okay.
Which is, again, highlighting, I think it goes beyond just acting crazy. This is...
this is proper character development here that she's doing, yeah.
Yeah. And it's interesting how much she is, acting at this level, especially how much it is just her and Joan Crawford on screen kind of going back and forth and bickering as sisters. It's very interesting that you see what type of sentences and what type of comebacks trigger the different emotions out of her, whether she comes at it as from a childish perspective, from a extreme sadness, from an extreme anger, how the alcoholism plays into that and kind of magnifying those feelings. I thought it was a very dynamic performance, and even though maybe the structure of getting out of the house and how it's like Misery is a little dated, there's a moment where Joan throws a note out the window to someone that's out in the street, but she doesn't just yell out and say, "Help me!" In Misery, they're in the middle of nowhere, so the script and the premise has evolved, as an idea to be sharper. It's a sharper concept or a sharper premise.
Right. That's funny that you were drawn to this comparison so much, though.
Oh yeah, and again, I mean, it's the wheelchair, it's the flirting with getting caught the entire film. It is the layout of the house. It's one stairwell on the right side of the frame.
That's awesome.
And how many scenes are just challenged around that stairs?
Yeah, that's awesome.
It was really interesting. I guess On the Shoulders of Giants, me thinking that Misery is the better film.
Was Misery a
Stephen King?
Yeah,
I think so. I know
I'm pretty
Rob
sure it
Reiner
was.
Directed it, and I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, it was a King novel. Yeah,
yeah. It's hard to maybe give credit to the originator in these type of scenarios, but I definitely was enjoying it just as much, in that kind of sense. So I think there's some frustrating aspects to maybe its lack of focus on, kind of common sense around the thriller and her getting out of the scenario. But it's also a little bit different of a film in the sense that it is about the sisters' relationship and spotlighting a great performance from Bette Davis that, very simply, I mean, she is just packing so much into the mental instability of this character.
It.
Yeah,
I'd be interested to see who won in 62. Best
That's
actress.
a good point.
Maybe that would be a good watch too.
Yeah, absolutely. Who beat out? So, but despite the duo of movies, starting with Crawford as the focus, I think Davis is the one that I would recommend this movie for, and especially gets a fairly positive rating for me. In the landscape of, I could very easily point to another movie that does the concept better, but still very much worth your time, especially if you're looking for an older film, and Bette Davis as a phenomenal entry and a good dive into her wonderful acting career. We're gonna go ahead and give Whatever Happened to Baby Jane a 66.
Okay, 66. I'm a little shocked that it's not in the 70s. Was it just a little bit too basic, failing in a couple areas?
I guess it really goes into how maybe frustrated I was with the early thriller aspects. Again, a perfect example is that she has the window open. There's the neighbor outside, and
is she afraid to yell out because Bette Davis? She doesn't want to know Betty.
Yeah, but the whole reason why she's doing this is she's gone from the house. It's just, you know what I mean? Maybe there's a slow burn to the buildup of this film, but I think it didn't have as much punch in modern day.
Kind of like it's a relatively good movie, but what really makes it is Bette Davis.
Exactly.
And Bette Davis is what actually carries it to a 66.
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly.
But not in the 70s. All right, so that's Whatever Happened to Baby Jane, 1966. And Bancroft, by the way, won for The Miracle Worker.
Oh, I don't even know.
I don't know either. All the reason to dive in more to some of the older films.
Yeah, exactly.
But okay, so this is now 1981, so it's 19 years later. This is Mommie Dearest by Frank Perry. And again, just why again did you pair this with Whatever Happened to Baby Jane?
Sure. So Mommie Dearest is the book that Joan Crawford, as the real-life actress, her adopted daughter wrote after she died, after Joan died. and depicts the real life horror that Joan was in a household as the mother, raising her children very strictly to the point of kind of psychological
This is Joan
abuse.
growing up by her?
No, this is Christina Crawford
growing up
with
under
Joan.
the household of Joan. Okay.
Exactly. Joan is the mother.
Gotcha.
Joan is Mommie Dearest. And again, the connection here originally was maybe a special idea of films about about actors or actresses that have kind of fallen from grace in some
Kind
sort
of a cool
way.
idea.
Yeah, it didn't really pan out. Maybe because I really wasn't in love, really in love with either of these films.
Right.
So, ironically, Joan Crawford was the protagonist of the last movie, and while in real life she was a living nightmare to those around her. She was definitely the antagonist of her life. When it comes to this being a biographical account, in researching this, there was a lot of switch up to people maybe throwing some flack at the credibility of Christina Crawford, and were these accounts really
was it
true?
that bad?
Yeah, exactly.
You get a lot of that with Bing Crosby often too.
Sure. For me, it was interesting kind of unpacking it. For what it's worth, this film is not a great shining example of this being good content or even accurate content, because this film is absolutely flogged by critics upon release.
It's won a lot of Razzies.
Yeah, they hated Faye Dunaway's performance.
Okay.
They think it's a very boring film. I'm on the side of one of those, but not all of those. I mean, I think the huge amount of flack this film got. I mean, in some areas it's being called, I think actually probably by the Razzies or something, I really don't like spotlighting an organization like that, but they were calling it like the worst film of the decade or something like that. I think that's very dramatic for 1980s.
Yes.
I mean? So
yeah, it was winner of worst picture of the decade.
That's insane.
By the Razzies.
Of all the shitty films in
yes.
the 80s,
The Razzies gave it this one.
Yeah.
Which is kind of hilarious.
But the story is slim here. Joan is aging in her career, and once again, kind of an interesting reflection of a little bit of what we covered in Baby Jane, and just feeling immense pressure from her, usual warm public perception turning cold. It brings out radical outbursts from her and lashing out in extreme ways. This film gets a lot of flack for Faye Dunaway's performance here as Joan. Critical reception tore this one apart, and some even thinking it caused the downturn of Dunaway's career after 3 Oscar nominations, Chinatown, Network, Bonnie and Clyde. Dunaway was a huge star, and this being in '81, I don't know if that's exactly lines up with the mapping of her downfall in the career. Or her own career, but I still think it's important to point to, because the truth of the matter is she doesn't really get a lot of high-end films, high-end offers after this. There is a significant downturn.
No, and she's still working.
Yeah, she's still working
every year, but not in anything.
Yeah, exactly. There is a quality to it that has downturned, which is a shame.
Deserving though.
I like campy villains. I like,
you kind of liked it?
There is an entertaining aspect to her freaking out all over this film. Does it make sense where she freaks out? No. Does it have any of what I praised the last film of Betty Davis's performance, that it was layered and pulling from multiple areas of the psyche of the character? No, there's nothing of that there. It's really just her acting like a total basket case and like off her handle, but there is also some enjoyment in that, in the sense that like an Al Pacino freak out is just enjoyable to watch on screen.
So it is not a case of like, it's not coming across as just like, wow, Joan really was a crazy person. It's like, oh, Faye is really overacting here.
Yes, okay. and that's where I tie together that this film doesn't do the perspective that there are some doubters to Christina Crawford's accounts of her mother.
Right.
There are some doubters to the validity of that book that was released and that this is based off of, in just the same way. Unfortunately, Dunaway's performance does not add add to that. If anything, it kind of highlights it more that this simply cannot be how this was. You know, what I mean? Not this drastic, not this, you know, out of nowhere, you know, mood swings. It's nuts. And I think critically, where if I had to give some flack to it, they do come out of nowhere. A perfect example of this is Crawford wins her Oscar within Mommie Dearest. You know, Joan Crawford's Oscar win. It is shown in Mommie Dearest at home.
Oh, okay.
And the same night she wins the Oscar, she goes on probably her top 3 tirades in the whole film over wire hangers in the closet, and she's thrown out the entire closet, and she's beating the kids, and she's just having this whole breakdown. And I mean, it's
a little unbelievable. To say the least.
I think it just doesn't track logically. Like, why does winning the Oscar equal a freak out? Okay. You know?
Right.
It's like, all right. I mean, maybe let's bake some lead into the script a little bit better. That I guess if the biographical take on this is that she really freaked out the night she won the Oscar, I guess you can't get around that. But from a script perspective, it felt out of nowhere and added to like the campiness of this.
Of course.
You know what I mean?
A bit of a mess,
like, yeah. She turns into this mustache twirling villain out of nowhere and is insane. So acting really necessarily isn't my issue with the film. Like I said, I can't stress enough, it is entertaining. There is a cathartic factor just seeing her lose her lid each time, and there's some really iconic moments, especially towards the end of the film. Some of the lines that she says is just like, wow, this is great. There's just a lack of thread that strings these freakouts together, and I think my real issue with this film is that the plot has no objective. Again, this is supposed to be biographical in nature, but it's made as this like psychological drama. The whole time we're obviously following Christina Crawford as our main character and growing up to the point of young adulthood. It's just like, after a while, we're just kind of stopping in and checking in when she's visiting her mother, and her mother gets to be crazy a little bit, and then there's another big jump in time. I would say almost the entire second half of this film is so disjointed. The pacing is just like, wow, like why are we even bothering almost? Like,
okay, so
we go from her being in boarding school to her being in college to her being a working actor, Christina Crawford.
But we're not getting much there. It's meandering.
Yeah.
And boring.
And really circling the drain on, you know, she visits her mother and her mother loses her shit.
Okay.
And then a couple of years later, she visits her mother again, and guess what? Her mother loses her shit. You know, there's just not a lot there as far as the pacing. For kind of the second week in the row, I'm really dancing around the term boring. But there is a boring aspect to it in the sense that this just does not have engagement. There's no objective to the film that we're like, okay, at least we're going here. I know where this is ending.
Literally, the only point is to say that Joan was a bad mother and a crazy person, and that's it.
Exactly.
And that just does that can't fill 2 hours and 9 minutes.
I think this film would benefit wonderfully from starting the whole story off at the end of Joan's life, or while Christina is writing this book, and maybe showing some emotional distress. And then that way, the entire film, we're at least piecing together, okay, what led to these events. I think that would do wonders, something so simple as that, to create engagement in this. Instead, we're just kind of for almost the entire second half, just kind of meandering and just saying, all right, well, when's the next time we're going to see a freak out?
I mean, I think that's a great point, and it probably would make it much, much, much better. Because, and then it would make sense that you're moving a little bit quick, and you're hitting these life highlights, kind of.
Exactly.
But the whole point is because eventually you're going to go into that scene where you're back with her at actual current age, or writing the book. I think that's a phenomenal idea.
Yeah.
Okay, so so the critics where you said I agree with one of those but not the other really didn't care. You didn't mind her acting, but it was so bad that it was campy, and that's why it was enjoyable.
Yes.
But boring, they got it right.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. There's, I don't know, a guilty pleasureness, if you will, this film, because I enjoyed Dunaway, and I think she's absolutely, insane in this, but I don't think those were the bad qualities. The bad qualities was that it was the blow-ups, the freakouts were missing the backing track to it, the lead up, the build to it. Right. And instead they really come out of nowhere, and yes, they may be enjoying in their shock value, but they don't have any tie, and they certainly don't have any sort of payoff significant. So much so by, really towards the end of the film, I'm wondering why Christina even felt so compelled to write this book. There's almost a confusion in the message of her own hit piece, if you will, if you even want to see it as a hit piece or anything like that towards her mother, or adopted mother. It's a hard one because I would say, I almost, besides my own study of this and trying to piece a special together, I think there's really not much reason to revisit this random film from 1981. But if you're curious about the secret side of a golden age actress, I would say maybe this is you can give it a watch. Or maybe if you're even, interested a little bit in Faye Dunaway and some other performances and the downturn of her career, someone that was really, really well reviewed and in some great productions, and then kind of still worked, but nowhere at that caliber. Once again, this could be some morbid curiosity there, but otherwise, I don't think it's something that you need to circle back with to past critics' delight. We're going to go ahead and give Mommie Dearest a 47.
All right, 47. It almost sounds like that might be a pretty favorable score.
Yes.
With the way that the critics and everything like that.
Yeah, people are saying this is the worst film of the decade, and in the 80s, that's
that's
the most
pretty,
insane thing I've ever heard.
Yeah, especially in that decade. That's ridiculous.
Yeah, so
okay, all right, very good, Vin. So we'll keep it rolling here. That was just 81. Now we're 3 years ahead of time. This is 1984, Vin. This is Streets of Fire. Again, surprised me with this one. Why was this one on your radar? And what is the movie exactly?
So this is the second time around with Walter Hill. We covered The Warriors, which was this like rock and roll beat 'em up in New York City.
You enjoyed it? I think it was 77.
Yeah, I don't know.
Was that a little high? It was in the 70s for sure.
Yeah, it was definitely in the 70s. I think it was low 70s.
Okay.
But I really enjoyed the film. Just a great, simple premise. And I would say my most important note is that it's such a distinct feel to the cityscape. Walter Hill really crafted such a unique feel to the city that it was employed there. So it's been 5 years since that film, a few more films under his belt, and now with Streets of Fire, instead of just having a very prevalent rock and roll soundtrack to it, this is actually billed as a rock-themed odyssey or a rock fable, as this says.
That's kind of cool.
Yeah.
I like the premise.
It definitely is. It's very 80s. Right off the back, it is very. The soundtrack is kind of a mix between blues and meatloaf and kind of rock opera type of things to it. It is distinctly not a musical, though. I was going into this thinking that it was going to be a musical, and that is not the case.
And just because that was your notion of it?
Well, it was kind of like a rock and roll fable. I was maybe expecting like a Blues Brothers or even like a Rocky Horror, something like that. One of my biggest praises of the Warriors is that they have a radio DJ speaking about the progress of the Warriors trying to get out of the city the entire time.
Okay. And it moves.
It's so good. Oh, man, I really do love the Warriors. This was, in the beginning, was really coming out of the gate strong. I was saying first hour, I was like, wow, this might beat the Warriors as far as concept. Unfortunately, it just kind of fizzles out. Okay. It kind of just doesn't know what to do in the second half.
Okay. Well, I was going to say, it's snappy. So it's like an hour and 33. So where does it go wrong, or how quickly does it?
I would say right at that hour mark, it's like everyone gets what they want and the film goes on for another 30 minutes. It's almost like they wrote a really solid TV episode, if you will.
We've seen this before.
Yeah. And I'll get into a little bit of the story itself, but I just want to note some of the positive aspects of what brought me into this film. Like I said, I mean, the strongest aspect of The Warriors, I think, was the cityscape and how that setting was used so strategically of just getting the hell out of a scary city at night. And it's not quite as tight as a premise with Streets of Fire, but the setting is now a fantasy city, a dystopian cityscape, if you will, a rock and roll themed city. It just sounds,
it sounds great.
Yeah. It's pretty interesting, but distinctly not a real city. I just always describe these settings as kind of a Sin City-like. Not that Sin City was the originator, but for me, growing up, that was the first kind of dive into, something, the city being a setting, but also taking on theming of its own and almost a character of its own.
Yeah, some type of dystopian.
Yeah.
Not quite.
It's not cyberpunk. It's not
apocalypse.
Yeah,
quite.
Yeah. Right. Society is still operating, but
it's just a whole different dystopian type thing.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. The set design, though, is great. We go from very realistic, New York set pieces in Warriors to definitely a set design that I want to give a lot of credit to, a lot of love to the design in general. Apparently, Armani does all the costumes in this one.
Oh my God, that's awesome.
Which is, great.
That's crazy.
Yeah. Cool collaboration in ~84, certainly. We just get a few city blocks of this world, but the immense amount of world building that Walter Hill is able to do with these few city blocks is definitely where I come in with a rating that probably is a little higher than it should be for this film, because I think as a whole, you'll walk away from this film not really in love with it. But those first couple moments and what brings you in are just so electric that I still want to give it somewhat of a positive. Let's talk about some of the story, though. So the story is simple. It's almost very Westernish. A rock musician, Ellen Aim, played by Diane Lane, gets kidnapped by a biker gang led by our boy. This is both of our boys, Willem Dafoe.
Oh, really?
Yeah, Willem Dafoe is a really early performance in here.
Perfect.
Yep. Her manager, played by Rick Moranis as well. I mean, I think this is one of Rick Moranis' first films, period, which is awesome. Her manager enlists a hired gun to kind of track down the bad guys and get her back. I would say the music is doing a lot of heavy lifting here in the enjoyment of this film. There is a mix between kind of echoey blues guitar and again, like I said, some of these rock opera Meatloaf type of vibes to it.
I like that it's '84 and you're not getting like you're not getting just ridiculous '80s guitar in there.
Sure, or cheap synthesizers.
Electric drums.
Yeah. Ry Cooder, who is a musician and composer, does this. Yeah.
Okay, respect.
Old blues head. You actually might know Ry Cooder more than me.
Yeah.
But the songs themselves, I was enjoying them. I don't want to give an over amount of credit for it. These kind of rock opera songs kind of bookend the film itself. And then we get Ry Cooder's score being, again, echoey kind of blues guitar throughout the whole thing. It does a lot of heavy lifting because it sells the design. It sells the fantasy of this rock and roll city.
It puts you in the mood, kind of. It gets you there, yeah.
And the reason why I say this premise of this is kind of Westernish is because almost like a spaghetti Western, almost like a Fistful of Dollars, that soundtrack is doing so much of the selling of cool on screen. The rule of cool is, guess what? Our guy is looking tough. And there's cool music behind it, and we maybe get a close up on his face, or he does something cool. But it's not really necessarily in the performance itself, and that's where we get into some of the bad. The dialogue is pretty whack, if not abhorrent. It's real disappointing.
Okay,
and really, as the longer the film goes on, the more it just soils the bed. It's rough. Michael Paré. Mike, I think that's how you're supposed to say it. Paré?
Yeah, I would say Paré.
Yeah.
Say Michael.
Hey, Mikey. Mikey is basically kind of like a dumb anime protagonist. He just says like out.
And he's our main dude.
He's our main dude.
Oy.
Yeah, I can't even call this kind of an ensemble or anything like that. He is absolutely our main dude. He's the gun for hire, but then he's
Okay.
also dated Diane Lane's character, who he's trying to rescue. I mean, he's the, he kind of comes into town, he rolls into town, he finds people that want him to get a job done, and then he, winds up leaving town, basically. And that's where this kind of Western, style comes into play.
Sure.
He thinks he's way too cool for his own good, and it comes off incredibly stale. He delivers his lines with not an ounce of inflection or change in tone. He could be saying he loves you or he needs to kill you, and it sounds exactly the same. And sometimes they really give him these blocks of dialogue that are just like, oh my God, get this guy off the screen. He's so bad. He's so bad. I unfortunately say this does kind of sink the whole film, because if this was a case where it was the premise rock and roll city and we touch on a lot of characters like we do, but maybe the story was about finding individual stories with those characters, it'd be a totally different ball game. Because I think performances like Willem Dafoe, like Rick Moranis, are highlights for me on this film.
Good. Of course, no shocker there.
Right.
Really no shocker.
But because
We're with Mike a lot.
Yeah, he is the man with no name, if you will. He is the Clint Eastwood type of character rolling into town, and the film is ending with his arc. Man, he not only does he not sell it, but I just actively wanted him off the screen. And it goes from, okay, he's maybe intentionally dumb as a character and just having these cool moments. He doesn't have to be a brainiac or anything like that to be cool. But at the same time, I mean, there is like, whoa, it is a bad performance.
Okay.
Like, I can't say I've spent, I have seen anything Mikey has been in otherwise, but I will be steering clear. My ears will be perked to see that dry delivery from him. So, like I mentioned at the beginning, I'll probably mention it one more time with this review. This film, I'm going to give probably a little bit more generous of a rating than it should, and just because I was really in love with some of the style and just such a unique feel that Walter Hill was able to craft, there is a significant blemish with performance on this one, though. A significant blemish.
Okay.
On the plus side, like I said, Rick Moranis, one of his first films, William Dafoe plays a psychotic biker. He is the leader of the biker gang. He is absolutely jacked in this.
Really?
Yeah. He wears...
That's weird, because he's just so scrawny.
Yeah, exactly. I don't know, actually. I did the research for Moranis. I didn't actually look how early this was in Dafoe's career.
It was early. I mean, some of his early stuff was in like his early 80, 81. But this was, one of his main first.
Yeah.
For sure.
he's just got such presence on screen. He's wearing these, he's not wearing any shirt. He's wearing presumably completely naked underneath, but this like shiny leather overalls. And then when he's biking, he just throws a big leather trench coat over that. And it's just like, I don't know. He looks like a vampire biker, man. It's so wild. You've got some great faces.
Awesome. That's awesome.
In this, that really goes for all the characters besides Mikey. They're all doing a great job. Even Diane Lane. I mean, she plays this cool, lead front woman of a rock band, and she sells this kind of cool, this apathy that would come with it. The characters in this movie, I really was in love with a lot of them, but it's a shame how much is just sunk by our lead. It's a real shame. I think they have a solid idea for the first hour. The movie, is extremely strong out of the gate. It has those beats to kind of keep you interested, and definitely the music as well is a thread to keep you interested. I think maybe my judgment on that is retroactive, though, because the music wasn't enough to save the whole
right, of course,
you know
of course.
What I mean? So, yeah, I
this
enjoyed
performance
it. But
really tanked it.
yeah.
So music was relatively good, and you like the characters and the rest of the cast. That's how bad. And were the other cast written okay?
Yeah,
like
absolutely.
They were written appropriate and everything?
Even his character, it's not necessarily like bad lines or anything like that. It really just like straight up comes down to delivery.
Wow. It's embarrassing.
This film could be almost identical in rating to The Warriors if this one piece was removed, because if anything, the Warriors feels like a proto version of this film. There, you can see what I always love to see in studying directors, and I'm not really studying Walter Hill as in a major way. This was just one that I wanted to chip away at. But you see that he has, in the 5 years or so that he's taken to develop as a director, he has used that to refine his product quite a bit.
Right.
The way he tells a story, the way he is shooting the cityscape, the way he is world building with the cityscape, it is all amped up from what we see in Warriors. So if you like Warriors, I think there's a good chance that this film is a high recommendation from me. But it's just, again, it's got a blemish. It has got the biggest pimple on its face.
That sucks. That really sucks. Yeah. Especially because, I mean, you love the world building in the way that it was so crazy New York.
Yes.
And he had like just dozens of different gangs, and you love the setup of it. So it's a shame, especially with a snappy hour and a half. Mm-hmm. It sucks that one performance brings it down that much.
Yeah, it really does. And again,
were you thinking if only this guy was in this role that time?
Oh, I don't know. I think
maybe
he definitely wanted like a Clint Eastwood, probably, just with how Western this.
It's really trying to come across like that.
Yeah, well, it's just,
again, cool, this guy in particular.
Yeah, rule of cool. He walks into town, he gets it done, kind of thing.
Well, he's still working a lot, Michael Pare.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, as far as like completed work about to come out, pre-production, post-production, he has like around 35 projects,
wow.
35 projects.
Like in coming out. Like,
yeah,
wow.
Yes, working on, about to be released, yeah.
Okay, so yeah, we who knows? Maybe on a dry week of new releases, we'll cover something of his. But it's a real tough one for me because as dynamite as it is, it just kind of just fizzles, and it's not really there, unfortunately. I think my score is going to be generous for this, and I hope it just demonstrates that a single flaw or just a handful of flaws can't erode entirely away at a movie's experience, because this movie experience is not acting. It is about the music. It is about the world, that you're stepping into. This movie is hard to love in a way, but can elicit a kind of a cult status, a cult classic.
I could see that, something like this.
Yeah, exactly. There is huge aspects to love about this, and in a lot of ways, this is a huge movie. But those flaws might be a make or break for some. It didn't hold my enjoyment back too much, but it's definitely a big factor that I've had to note, and maybe it's something that you just kind of have to see for yourself and use as a temperature, that if you checked out The Warriors after a review, or that's something that you love, this might be something that you want to check out. For now, we're going to go ahead and give Streets of Fire a 60 on the dot.
Oh, wow. It's better than I thought.
Okay, well, that's why I said. I think it's more generous than maybe some would give it.
Yeah, but like you said, if the first hour is that strong, even with him being a bad actor, if it's that strong, I mean, I guess the second half, or the second third, or last third.
And really, the world building is there throughout the entire thing. You know what I mean?
Very true, yeah. The music was okay, too.
There's an energy to it. There is, the music is good. I think there's much more to the film than just performances. And if anything, my recommendation is more so for those aspects rather than whatever dumb story there is of just saving his girlfriend, essentially.
Right, yeah. Okay, that's good. That's 60% for Streets of Fire if you want to check it out. Also, if you want to see some, some of the first performances from Moranis or Defoe, yeah. But, 60 for Streets of Fire. I'm excited for this one. We're jumping to 2022.
A huge jump.
Yeah, it doesn't count as new release. It came out in springtime. I'm excited for this one. This is RRR. It's directed by S.S. Rajamouli. How did this come on your plate? RRR. A Bollywood film. How did this even enter into your world?
So this film landed on my radar because this is going to be the most expensive Bollywood film made to date. The most expensive, what they would call Hindi films. That's kind of the Hindi industry of it. That is, I mean, not really something that I usually pay attention to. Big things like that. When the next Avatar comes out, I'm not going to be saying, oh, well, this was the most expensive. I mean, that's not I'm giving credit to it for it.
Right.
What I'm giving credit to is that it is quickly becoming the most successful as well that the Bollywood industry has ever produced. This has been supercharged by being licensed by Netflix and having it put in front of many different countries, many different cultures that would not watch a Bollywood film, that would be intimidated by its musical, or maybe it's crappy action.
Right.
Or maybe not intimidated, maybe just like, I'm not going to watch this. I have no interest to watch this. When it comes to this film, I mean, it was getting my attention because slowly but surely we now are seeing a lot of Western coverage of it, with it being rising into be, I think, top 3 most popular films the industry has produced.
Which is crazy because Bollywood pumps out a godly amount of films. It's crazy.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And I think it makes for an interesting premise to walk into this film. This film, folks, is one crazy, crazy ride, and in a good way. I was not hating this film whatsoever. There is I want to say almost nationalism. I've really actually, if there was a time that I wanted you to watch a film, Tom, and have some commentary on it, it would be this one. I mean, the film itself is, let me unpack this here. The film itself is a hyper-stylized fictional tale of 2 real-life revolutionaries.
Okay.
In the British overthrowing of India.
Early 1900s, we're talking.
Exactly. Yeah. This is set, I believe, on 1912 or 1920 on the dot.
Yeah, okay, that makes sense.
Here. It's odd because it would be like if you made a Marvel film out of George Washington and the Founding Fathers. It is
impossible. What are you saying?
I'm telling you, it is wild. It is these historical figures are doing crazy stunts and punching tigers and and staging these wild action sequences. I mean, it is insane, but I gotta say, it is by no means bad. The fight choreography is actually quite impressive.
Okay.
It is never beyond the point that you're looking at this and completely shutting off your brain. If anything, it engages in the fight choreography very well. There's a lot of wire work. It reminded me of, Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon kind of stuff, like earlier 2000s, what was coming out of China and Japan.
Okay.
But man, it is not bad. It's just a very weird premise of a probably the most awkward pill you could swallow to have these real historical figures, which I have no perspective for.
Sure. We just know that they're real.
Yes, that they are real. They're like revolutionaries at the starting of, of their country.
Right.
They are, jumping off of bikes and tossing the bike, and then it explodes. And I mean, the action sequences
doing very superhero-ish things.
Exactly.
Yeah,
it is. I can't call it Marvel specifically because it feels
it's grounded.
Like, well, no,
because they don't have superpowers.
They don't have superpowers. Yeah, they don't. You can maybe say they do have superpowers. But I say Marvel in the sense that that's what it would be in the States. This definitely is in a tradition of Bollywood in that the action usually bad in these films, usually blown out of proportion,
right,
and no realism. I would say if the money went anywhere towards this production, the massive budget went into this production, it was in a lot of the choreography and a lot of the set pieces. They are insane.
Really?
But
so it feels like a big movie.
Oh yeah, it feels like a huge movie. The amount of extras in this are wild, and I'm going to maybe regret saying this, but the CGI was better than most recent Marvel. It felt like
really?
The CGI was like, I don't know, it was almost even a little bit better than Prey that we covered.
I'm okay with that. That's fine.
There's some shots. There's actually a lot of shots with animals, and it's
because Bollywood is also, you think, cheap. just cheaply made,
Sure.
quick
Pumping
made
them
as well.
out. Exactly.
So the fact that if it feels big budget, if it looks good, if fight choreography is good, it's 3 hours and 7 minutes. That's kind of interesting that we're getting this epic that's done quite well.
Yeah, and believe me, you bring up another point. This 3-hour runtime. This is not my bag. I mean,
No,
normally.
it's not.
But I'm telling you, this film was very enjoyable, and not just enjoyable even in like a boys' watch of just like, oh, look how crazy this is. It's great.
Right.
No, this was enjoyable in the sense that I was looking at some of this fight choreography, and there's a lot of care put into making these real people pull off Marvel-style stunts, but creating tie back within the action sequences that actually kind of make it not semi-plausible, but like, they're putting in the work, they're putting in the effort to make sure that they can at least sell it to you.
Okay.
And this action was impressive.
But how does that... Okay, it's over 3 hours.
Right.
The action is good. How is the everything else?
So I would say the everything else is a split between 3 other pieces. I guess it's a 4-part kind of
Okay.
pie.
Okay.
Action and
good.
really insane action, but very good. We have this bromance between these two revolutionaries that I don't know if they were friends in real life. I was kind of going into some research into this, but then I realized, well, what's the point of researching this when this film is like clearly meant to be like this super fictional kind of telling of this. Apparently the director, during research, there was a gap in time that both of these revolutionaries kind of fall off the map, and they don't have a lot of recorded history, and that's the playground he uses to tell this story of their lives and prospectively when they first met or something like that. So we get this bromance between the two of them, and I gotta say, the fictional bromance works. It is not terrible. The from an outsider looking in, the film has no semblance of historical accuracy, but with this 3-hour runtime, they really don't skip on building a true friendship between these two characters. I don't have the names written down, but I'm sure I'd butcher the pronunciation.
The actors or the characters?
The actual characters.
Kamaran Vihim Alari Sitarama Raju.
You're right, Raju. Yep, that's one of them.
Okay.
And then, but yeah, the bromance that builds between them, it is no joke. I mean, they put in work. They put in a lot of effort to make this believable and make this friendship on screen something that you want to watch. You kind of want to watch the drama of them becoming friends and then the country and this British occupation tearing them apart. So it was very interesting. Third piece is romance. Romance, I would say this is where this kind of is hurt a little bit.
It's meh.
Yeah, it's meh. And then the fourth piece is going to be a hallmark of anything Bollywood, which is going to be a musical element. Now, this is where I stay away from anything Bollywood because I really don't have an interest in that type of music. I'm not really one for musicals in general, unless they're done, very, very well.
I'm there with you.
Yeah, this...
And it's Bollywood, so it's just like, okay, well, I have 146,000 Bollywood musicals. Where do we even start?
Yeah, exactly.
So I might as well just not watch.
Exactly. It's a lot to approach, and that's exactly where I wanted to cover this one, because this is the first crack of getting into maybe some Western audiences and making something outrageous, but it is unique and 100% a Bollywood film. I think my credit towards this is that it is not giving up its identity to be more consumable for other audiences.
Sure.
We are not dumbing this down like, if anything, Hollywood movies do.
Yes.
To dumb it down for more of a wide release or international
You put Matt Damon
release.
as in the Great Wall film.
Yeah, right.
That kind of deal.
Exactly. This film still has the Bollywood musical elements, but it's a little bit more palatable. There's only like 1 or 2 songs. There's also a closing song. This is exactly where I wanted your opinion on this, Tom, because...
You should have told me. I would have watched it.
It's like nationalist propaganda a little bit. It's like the songs are about the love they have for their founding fathers. And I mean, it's not bad.
But that's just... that's where we get into the difference of a patriot for one's country
Sure.
and a nationalist that has other meanings to it.
Right. So,
But I mean, that's if it's all about India being India and awesome, and that's I've got no, okay. It makes sense for what the movie is. I mean, it's called Rise, Roar, Revolt, really, and about overthrowing the British Empire out of the country. So whatever, that's fine. Okay.
But I think that's where it's a little bit more palatable. You're not getting a songs packed and shoved down your throat
that's
for
huge.
this entire,
Absolutely.
I mean, one or two musical sequences.
You can swallow that pill.
Yeah, among 3 hours, yes, absolutely. It's a lot more palatable for myself. Let's just even keep it right there. For myself walking into this, I'm not a fan of Bollywood. If anything, I really don't like a lot of the movies that I have seen in the past. And
is it still the worst part of the movie, romance aside? The musicals.
No, because if anything, it has the same energy and definitely has the same production as the bonkers action.
Okay.
You know what I mean? The amount of extras that they're getting.
Wow. Right when I thought I was going to be canceling Netflix sometime soon, Bollywood comes in to save the day.
Bollywood. Next year, all their yearly releases. It's all going to be Hindi films. It's wild. Yeah, I mean, I think for me on the technical side, this film does have some problems. Even in the native Hindi dub, there is
the
weird. Yeah, there's a weird disconnect. We actually get a lot of English-speaking voice actors. Probably some brownie points just for me, but I always appreciate it. We have a story that characters don't all speak the same language, and that's actually part of the story that they tell because there is a language divide. I enjoy this, not because I like reading subtitles or having that split there, but I think it's a realistic take on how maybe, people of different nations would interact and have some difficulty in communicating. My issue with it is on the technical side. I mean, for the highest, most expensive Bollywood film made, how are they having, with better CGI than Marvel, how are they having these technical problems with audio?
Yeah, on the back end. Yeah, that's no good.
It's wild. There's just like some weird mouth syncing for it, and
maybe we'll get a redub.
I don't know
if it does that well. But that is annoying, and that's the thing that's so noticeable too, which is a problem. You know what I mean? It's just something that you just pick up on it constantly.
Yeah, my theory, and believe me, I could be wrong on this one, but my theory is that the actors on the Hindi side are the same actors that are going to be singing the songs, but they are actually not going to be the dubbed lines in the dramatic pieces of this film. So they are the physical performance for the action, they are the musical performance, but they are not the dramatic performance. And I think that is even overdubbed in the way you're supposed to you're supposed to consume this film. It's a weird note to knock this film for, because again, this is the most expensive film. It's flying with soaring colors when it comes to some of its other production aspects, but failing in this one. Does that make sense? You know what I mean? It's why I'm scratching my head with that.
Yeah, I mean, no, it doesn't make any sense, especially if it's this size production, this much money. You really don't want to blow it on that. Yeah. So that's a shame. That's definitely a shame.
Yeah. It is kind of difficult to unpack because it's just a lot of this, not nationalism, this patriotism. I think you put it a little bit better.
Sure.
Tom, with the split of that. The love that went into this production and the scale of it, I think is worth a watch. I did not come away from this saying, you don't really have to waste your time. No, if anything, I would recommend this to a few different audiences. I think I would recommend this if you're into high-stakes blockbuster action. I think I would recommend this if you are looking for a great bromance on screen. I mean, there's the friendship that they craft. I mean, it may sound silly, but it was enjoyable watching them bond, and then watching the dramatic turn of this, having them forced to kind of be against each other, split apart by British rule. So there was a lot of enjoyment there, and I think the focus is clearly on making wild action. I can't stress enough that this film did not feel like anything I've seen, and that's
refreshing. Very cool.
Oh yeah,
that was
super refreshing. And I can't say this is a point that I'm going to be going away and, for the next, next 4 weeks, we're going to be covering Bollywood films. Don't worry. We're not, we're not going to be doing that. But I do think this film, if only, gets a recommendation from me because it fills a gateway drug type of quality to it. It is an entryway to what some of these stylings, what some of this film genre, what some of this medium can be then. We're going to go ahead and give RRR, Rise, Roar, Revolt a 68.
Wow, it doesn't hit the 70s?
No, it doesn't hit the 70s.
You didn't say anything bad about it except for the romance. Only a 68, really. You're a tough one to crack this time.
Tough one. It's a tough one.
But still just not worth it. Still just it just doesn't quite, it's not there. It's not worth the 70s.
I think a lot could hold back my enjoyment with how cartoony it is. But don't get me wrong, 68 is still, I'm saying it is a good film, an above average film.
Definitely. That is a good movie. It's a good movie.
Maybe I should have clocked back some of my praise.
Why don't we just say it's probably on the Bollywood scale, we're in the 90s.
Right.
Why don't we say that?
This is probably the best Bollywood film I've ever seen. So
that's saying much, but
take
a look at the website. It's a little bare in there.
Right.
But awesome. I love it. 68 RRR. I think I'm definitely going to sit down and watch it.
Yeah.
When I have that time, if it's that good of time, absolutely. Okay, perfect. Yeah, all right. 68 for RRR. Give it a watch on Netflix if anybody wants.
Yeah, it's an easy watch. It's, low barrier to entry.
We remind people here we're completely producer supported, going on the value for value model. So if you're getting value from the podcast, if you're getting value from the website, are you enjoying yourselves? Are you getting into movies more than what you were maybe a year ago? Then if you could, go to thedailyratings.com, you go to the donations tab on the top right, put a dollar amount next to that value basically, and you can send a donation our way and write a note along with it. And basically what that says is you are now an actual official producer of the Daily Ratings. And that is a credit to you. And it's also a through line to you with your notes and everything like that. If you have questions or comments or critiques or complaints, that's fine. If you're going to take the time to donate money towards us and show value, then we're going to take time to read your note as well. Again, we're staying away from advertising. We are completely producer supported. So we want to thank all of you and hope you kind of join the Daily Ratings family.
Absolutely. Kind of. And we've been enjoying some of the comebacks, some of the hate mail. Actually,
it's very enjoyable.
Yeah, honestly.
It's great to read.
Yeah.
So, but anyway, that's what it is. It's thedailyratings.com at the donations tab, and we thank you all so much. Okay, Vince. So now we're going to close things off. This is our newly released. This is our in theaters now. It's got a little bit of buzz behind it, and I'm excited to hear about Bodies. What do we have with it? Kind of set it up for us here.
Yeah. So the director, we were trying to figure out how to maybe pronounce this. She's a Dutch actress turned director. Rajan, I think.
I said it wrong in the intro. It's Helena Rajan.
Rajan, yeah, Rajan.
I said Ryan, which I think is totally wrong. Helena Rajan, though.
Yeah, but she has been in stuff. I think not that it's a huge film, but she was in Valkyrie with Tom Cruise. But she's now turned director, and this is her second feature film. Once again, we are with A24 producing. Instead of their slow atmospheric horror they are normally used to green lighting, this is reminiscent of a lot of their earlier works. I'm talking Bling Ring, I'm talking Good Time, maybe even Spring Breakers, maybe even a little bit Uncut Gems. It's much more... It's less horror. This film is being billed as like a slasher or a whodunit. It definitely is a whodunit, but... it's not really focused on horror. It's more trying to create a lens into these Gen Z, late millennial characters' lives and still spotlight that with the seriousness and the gravity that a normal drama film would have with that.
Okay.
And I got to say, I was pretty in love with this film. I thought this was a great movie. Yeah. Bodies refers to the game of whodunit that this group of rich girls plays during parties. The plot quickly takes on a meta quality to it as the group of friends finds an actual dead body and the real game begins. I would say this approach to horror certainly reminds me of Scream, where there's a degree of self-awareness. There is an understanding that they are in kind of a horror movie themselves, and that's taking on how these characters are acting and how they're working. This premise is only one of many smart choices this film makes. Let's talk a little bit about dialect in a script. It feels weird to bring up a film like this, talking about dialect, most of the time we're just going to be hearing someone do a Southern accent, talk with a Southern twang, and have lines in their script to make them feel of that setting. But this film takes that, and I mean, dialect may sound silly, but they are really taking this late millennial, Gen Z, internet.
You mean
culture.
Early millennial?
No, I would say late millennial. Yeah.
So you have Gen Zs and then people who are like 18 years older.
More so their dialogue of how they're talking.
Okay,
they're talking with internet culture. They're talking with.
That's what I mean. Early millennial you mean late millennial as far as younger?
Younger. Yeah, more closer to Gen Z. You know what I mean?
Right. It's just funny how you could phrase that two different ways.
Sure.
Because when I hear late millennial, I'm hearing like, oh, people in like almost 40 now.
Oh, I see what you mean. Yeah.
But yes, we're talking about Gen Z millennial. Early 20s.
Yeah, internet culture. You're triggering me vibes. You know what I mean?
Sure. Yeah.
These things, they're baked into the script, like a dialect would be in any script. But the balancing act, and I really mean this. This is not cringy. This is not annoying. This is, if anything, wonderfully done. Am I saying that it is the best performance in the world, having these young actresses talk like a real, these real rich girls probably would?
Yeah.
I'm not saying it's the most amazing thing, but the film achieves a wonderful pacing, a wonderful feel to it by not having this dialogue come off annoying, and if anything adds a lot of value to the psychological kind of dive into each of their characters as the horror of this film builds. I confidently say that the dialect of this film is the strongest quality of it, that mix of kind of Gen Z slang and internet culture. It shockingly does not make my skin crawl, and if anything, was very good. I think really hats off to this movie being billed as a dark comedy. I think it 100% works as a dark comedy for that reason.
The comedy elements totally work with it, yeah.
Because you can look at this dialect and say, well, is that really accurate? And some of it is coming off for jokes. Some of it is very much poking fun at that Gen Z
I think
slang.
that's important, because if it was trying to be super, super serious, then it's just going too far with trying to depict a culture or something like that.
Yeah.
Or
on the opposite end of it, if it was all to make fun of the slang, well, guess what? Then, the film is kind of shooting its own demographic in the foot, because this is definitely, targeted towards a younger audience in this, this bloody rated R film. But I got to say, that balancing act to achieve the middle, it
is quite the balancing act. Yeah, dancing on that edge of the knife,
for sure. And a very good film for that reason. I'll be definitely keeping my eyes on these writers. They are both first-time writers for this production, so I'm very curious to see what they can do, because they really knocked it out of this park with this balancing act. That is Sarah Delappy, I believe, and Christian Rupinian. Kristen Rupinian.
Yeah, that looks right.
Pronunciation not a strong suit this episode. But as the horror goes on, I will say I was very surprised. There is an odd enjoyment in these group of girls just being way in over their heads. Like, they have no idea what to do once the bodies start showing up. They are just so hopelessly underprepared. And rather than be annoyed by it, like, I think countless other films I give credit to or flack for the competency of our characters.
Sure, absolutely.
It's all in the execution. This is an entertaining shit show, and that's kind of the pitch of this. The scenes are...
The whole point is incompetence.
Exactly, yeah. And the whole point is them just thinking they know how the world works with all this internet culture and not having a clue. And there's really a brilliance that the film achieves in that. Scenes kind of successfully blend the juicy drama of what a rich group of girls would be concerned with, who's dating who,
sure.
Why'd you stab me in the back when kind of stuff, but what's brilliant is we don't get this in beforehand, or we don't get introduced to this in any sort of way that is like an exposition dump. It is blended into the accusations of who they think is the killer. So in addition to the point of the finger, we are now getting a slice of what relationship two characters have and what maybe is their conflict between these two characters and what their history is. And again, I think it fits the genre of what this film is going, or rather the mood this film is going for, that it's about these catty girls, and like they're more concerned with stirring the pot of this drama than actually solving the deaths in the house. But I think it's brilliant that the film, and once again, the credit goes to both the script and the screenplay here. It is not something that we're front loaded with. Oh, we know who hates who or something like that.
You figure that out. It's unfolding as you're watching.
Yeah, it's blended together with the accusations of who they think is the killer, and we get shades of everyone's picture, and we're puzzling it together. I mean, I really do think
that's nice. That's pretty cool.
It's dynamite. Yeah, it's really good.
It's continually. It's great when things don't just shovel things right to you. Yeah, it's great to figure things out as it unfolds.
Mm-hmm. And I think there's a follow through on the characters. Yeah, they were incompetent. Yeah, there's maybe, some lack of enjoyment in them not, being able to handle this situation even relatively.
Right.
But
it's frustrating, but purposely so.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. The movie takes bitchy drama and weaponizes it through this game of murder, and I can't tell you how by the end I was like really appreciating that structure of how we got to know these characters, not through any other way. It was through the game of whodunit. We found out these characters were. It's all in the execution, folks. This film could have been so generic, so annoying, but instead creates something quite unique. Out of the middle of the road shit that I have had to cover in August, man, this film should have been in more screens. Knock out Top Gun Maverick, get it out of there,
easy,
put in bodies. I would say it's already on the decline, though. I mean, I had to pull teeth and see a 2:00 showing.
This just came out?
It was first or second week of August.
Oh my gosh! Oh my gosh!
Yeah, so it's just getting swept, and I feel like that's the theme. All of August, everything was just getting pushed out for re-releases. We have Spider-Man being re-released. Top Gun Maverick in theaters forever. It's never getting kicked out.
Top Gun Maverick was the number one movie this past weekend. I don't know how it does it.
We're going to cover it again for the podcast.
It's unreal. It's unreal. Third, by the way, Spider-Man No Way Home, because it was a re-release.
Yep.
Can you believe Top Gun Maverick is number one again?
It's nuts. So realistically, I would say give this film some love. Realistically, you're going to have to give it some love on streaming. But again, I was very impressed with this. We are going to go ahead and give Bodies a 76.
All right, there we go.
That's
awesome. 76. I mean, what that says is a very good movie, as we say.
Yes.
As you near, you're in those mid 70s and then 70s in general. Mm-hmm. That's good. That's very good movie territory.
Well worth your time. Where, just to illustrate a perfect example with like Streets of Fire, or even not Streets of Fire, RRR. I enjoyed it plenty. I think some qualities held it back. This film achieved something so simple, but really, it just had the follow through and execution. Every piece was working with it. Where I can't exactly say that for any other of the film entries we covered this week. There was always something that was maybe in conflict with its own composition. Bodies was just all the way through. It was good. Everything contributed towards the execution of this film.
I think the scores this week very much represent that. Mm-hmm. Now, looking at these scores, man, is there anything else you'd like to add? We want to roll credits here.
No, I think a weird week. We can go ahead and
very
roll
weird week. Well, Vin, we thank you sitting down and watching all those films for us. Folks at home, we're going to run this down one more time. We have Whatever Happened to Baby Jane with a 66%, Mommie Dearest with a 47%, Streets of Fire with a 60%, RRR with a 68%, and Bodies with a 76%. Folks, we thank you so much for listening, and we'll see you next week on the Daily Ratings Podcast. you enjoy the podcast, if you would, give us a good rating. Or tell a friend about us. If you're wondering if a film is worth a watch, or just like to see more movie ratings from Vince, be sure to stop by thedailyratings.com, where we have our ever-expanding catalog of films. Also, if you found value in the podcast or our site, become a producer and go to the donations tab on thedailyratings.com. You can donate whatever amount of value you feel you received from us. We're looking to build this into something large and great, but also be independent from those corporate sponsors. So we greatly appreciate any support from you all. So thanks so much, and we'll see you next time on the Daily Ratings Podcast.